Throughout the annals of history, ethical dilemmas have punctuated the human narrative, challenging societies and individuals to confront their values, morals, and principles. These dilemmas, often complex and multifaceted, have served as crucibles for moral reflection and decision-making. Examining past cases and their outcomes offers invaluable insights into how societies and individuals have grappled with ethical dilemmas, shaping the course of history. In this exploration, we will delve into a selection of historical ethical dilemmas, analyzing the factors that influenced the decisions made and the profound consequences that ensued.
Before we dive in, if you find this content valuable, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment below. It truly helps us grow. Now, let's get started.
The trolley problem, a philosophical conundrum. The trolley problem, a thought experiment in ethics and moral philosophy, forces individuals to confront a profound ethical dilemma. First introduced in its modern form by British philosopher Philippa Foot in 1967, the scenario asks whether it is morally justifiable to actively switch a trolley onto a track that would sacrifice one person to save 5 others. While the trolley problem is not a historical event, it embodies a recurring ethical dilemma that has surfaced in various forms throughout history. Its enduring significance lies in the way it illuminates the tension between utilitarianism, maximizing overall happiness, and deontology, adhering to moral duties and principles. In 1945, during the final days of World War II, the United States faced a similar ethical dilemma. President Harry S. Truman had to decide whether to use atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki to hasten the end of the war and save American lives at the potential cost of thousands of Japanese civilian casualties. In this case, the United States opted for a utilitarian approach, believing that the destruction of Hiroshima and Nagasaki would expedite Japan's surrender, ultimately saving lives on both sides. This decision, though still debated today, offers a striking parallel to the trolley problem. Truman's choice to drop atomic bombs revealed a willingness to sacrifice one group, Japanese civilians, to save another, American soldiers and potentially Japanese civilians from further war. It remains a stark reminder of the moral quandaries that arise during times of conflict. The Nuremberg trials, accountability and justice. In the aftermath of World War II, the Nuremberg trials presented an unprecedented ethical challenge. These trials were intended to hold Nazi war criminals accountable for their actions during the Holocaust and other war crimes. The central ethical question revolved around the principle of individual responsibility for crimes committed under the cloak of a totalitarian regime. The Nuremberg trials, conducted by the Allied forces, faced criticism from some who argued that prosecuting individuals for obeying orders in a totalitarian regime raised ethical questions about personal culpability. However, the Nuremberg trials, by emphasizing the importance of individual accountability and distinguishing between those who actively participated in atrocities and those who were coerced, set a pivotal ethical precedent for addressing heinous acts committed by state actors. The Nuremberg trials played a significant role in the development of modern international law and the establishment of the United Nations, marking a collective commitment to holding individuals and states accountable for crimes against humanity. The American Civil Rights Movement, ethical activism and civil disobedience. In the mid-20th century, the United States was embroiled in a fierce ethical dilemma surrounding racial segregation and discrimination. The Civil Rights Movement challenged the nation's conscience, forcing Americans to confront the injustice of systemic racism. A central figure in this movement was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., whose advocacy for civil rights emphasized nonviolent protest and civil disobedience. King's approach represented a moral and ethical quandary, whether to confront oppression through violent or nonviolent means. Dr. King's commitment to nonviolent resistance, inspired by Mahatma Gandhi's principles, demonstrated the power of ethical activism. By choosing nonviolence, King and the civil rights movement sought to highlight the moral bankruptcy of segregation and inequality, appealing to the ethical sensibilities of the American public. The civil rights movement's success in securing important legislative changes, such as the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, attests to the persuasive power of nonviolent, morally grounded activism. The Tuskegee Syphilis Study, Ethical Failures and Lessons Learned. While history provides numerous examples of ethical successes, it also holds painful reminders of ethical failures. The Tuskegee Syphilis Study, conducted between 1932 and 1972 in Macon County, Alabama, stands as one of the most egregious ethical transgressions in the field of medical research. This study involved the systematic withholding of treatment from African American men who had contracted syphilis, without their informed consent. Researchers allowed the men to suffer the devastating effects of the disease for decades, all in the name of studying its progression. The Tuskegee syphilis study raises critical ethical questions about the treatment of vulnerable populations and informed consent. The study's legacy is a stark reminder of the potential consequences when ethical principles are disregarded in scientific research. It prompted a re-evaluation of research ethics, leading to the establishment of comprehensive guidelines and oversight to protect the rights and well-being of research participants. The Rwandan genocide, international apathy and responsibility. The Rwandan genocide, which unfolded in 1994, was a tragic episode in recent history that exposed the international community's ethical dilemma, whether to intervene in a sovereign nation's internal conflict when mass atrocities are being committed. The genocide, marked by the mass murder of hundreds of thousands of Rwandans, placed the world in a moral quagmire. The international community's reluctance to intervene and prevent further bloodshed laid bare the dilemma of sovereignty versus humanitarian responsibility. The United Nations' failure to act decisively during the genocide raised ethical questions about collective responsibility in the face of such atrocities. The subsequent development of the Responsibility to Protect, R2P, doctrine aimed to address this dilemma by recognizing the international community's responsibility to intervene in cases of mass atrocities. The Rwandan genocide serves as a painful reminder of the catastrophic consequences of inaction and the ongoing challenge of balancing state sovereignty with the ethical imperative to prevent human suffering. The climate change crisis, ethical responsibilities and global cooperation. In the 21st century, the global ethical dilemma surrounding climate change has gained increasing prominence. The relentless destruction of the environment and the profound consequences of climate change have prompted a reassessment of humanity's ethical responsibilities toward the planet and future generations. Climate change requires nations and individuals to confront ethical questions about resource allocation, environmental stewardship, and intergenerational justice. The choice between short-term economic interests and long-term environmental sustainability underscores the ethical dilemma at the heart of this crisis. Efforts to address climate change through international agreements like the Paris Agreement reflect the global community's recognition of its shared ethical responsibility to protect the environment. While challenges remain, these agreements represent a step toward acknowledging the ethical imperative of preserving the planet for future generations. Conclusion: an ongoing ethical journey. The historical ethical dilemmas presented here illustrate the enduring relevance of moral quandaries in shaping the course of history. Whether considering the moral calculus of the trolley problem, the pursuit of justice in the Nuremberg trials, or the imperative of ethical activism during the civil rights movement, these ethical challenges continue to influence our world. Moreover, the ethical failures of the Tuskegee syphilis study and the Rwandan genocide remind us of the dire consequences when ethical principles are disregarded or when the international community fails to act in the face of atrocities. These historical episodes serve as cautionary tales, highlighting the importance of upholding ethical standards in research and the responsibility to protect vulnerable populations. The climate change crisis represents a contemporary ethical dilemma that transcends national borders. It underscores the urgent need for global cooperation and individual responsibility in safeguarding the planet for future generations. The choices we make today will have profound ethical implications for the well-being of people around the world and the sustainability of our environment. As we reflect on these historical ethical dilemmas and their outcomes, we must acknowledge that ethical challenges are not confined to the past. They persist in the present and will continue to shape the future. In an ever-evolving world, ethical decision-making remains a complex and vital aspect of human existence. Ultimately, the study of historical ethical dilemmas and their consequences offers us valuable insights and lessons. It encourages us to engage in ongoing ethical discourse, to consider the implications of our choices, and to strive for a more just, compassionate, and sustainable world. The moral dilemmas of the past serve as a guidepost for our collective journey toward a more ethical and equitable future, where the lessons of history can help us navigate the challenges of tomorrow.